16-year-old Zara checked her phone for the third time as she walked through the glass doors of Valley Trust Bank. The air conditioning hit her face like a cool wave, making her realize how nervous she actually was. In her hand, she clutched a small envelope that contained something she had been waiting for all summer, her very first paycheck. 3 weeks ago, Zara had started working at the Riverside Community Center. It wasn't glamorous work, but she loved every minute of it. She helped organize activities for kids during summer camp, set up art supplies, cleaned up after snack time, and sometimes even helped the younger children with their reading. The pay wasn't much, but it was hers. She had earned every single dollar of that $240. Her mom had dropped her off at the bank during her lunch break from the hospital where she worked as a nurse. "Make sure you read everything before you sign it," her mother had said, giving her a quick hug. "And don't let them pressure you into anything you don't understand." Zara had been planning this moment for weeks. She had researched different types of bank accounts online, compared fees, and even watched YouTube videos about how to open your first bank account. She wanted to do everything right. This wasn't just about depositing a check. This was about becoming more independent, more grown up. The bank was busier than she expected for a Tuesday afternoon. People in business suits talked on their phones while waiting in line. An elderly couple sat at a desk with a banker signing papers. Zara took her place in line behind a man in a construction vest who was making a deposit. She used the waiting time to practice what she would say. "Hi, I'd like to open a savings account and deposit this check." She had rehearsed it in her head dozens of times, but her palms were still sweaty. What if they asked her questions she couldn't answer? What if she needed documents she didn't have? The construction worker finished his transaction and moved away from the window. Zara stepped forward, taking a deep breath. The teller was a woman who looked to be in her 40s, with short blonde hair pulled back neatly. Her name tag read Patricia Wells. She was finishing up some paperwork and didn't look up right away. "Next," Patricia called out, still focused on her computer screen. Zara approached the window with what she hoped was a confident smile. "Hi, I'd like to open a bank account, please. This is my first job and I want to deposit my paycheck." Patricia finally looked up, her eyes scanning Zara from head to toe. Zara suddenly felt self-conscious about her outfit. She had chosen her nicest jeans and a clean polo shirt, thinking it looked professional enough. But under Patricia's gaze, she wondered if she should have dressed differently. "How old are you?" Patricia asked, her tone neutral but not particularly friendly. 16, Zara replied. "But I have a job. I work at the community center." Patricia's expression didn't change much, but something in her eyes suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Do you have a parent with you?" "No, but my mom said I could open an account by myself. I looked it up online and it said minors can open accounts at most banks." Zara had done her research, but Patricia's question made her doubt herself. "Well, let me see the check first," Patricia said, extending her hand. Zara carefully removed the check from the envelope. It was made out to Zara Thompson from Riverside Community Center in the amount of $240. She had stared at it so many times over the past day, hardly believing it was real. Her name, printed on an official paycheck, felt like proof that she was becoming an adult. Patricia took the check and held it up, examining it closely. She turned it over, looked at the front again, then held it up to the light. Zara watched, confused by the lengthy inspection. Was this normal? She had seen her parents deposit checks before, and it never seemed to take this long. "This is from the community center?" Patricia asked. "Yes, ma'am. I work there helping with the summer camp program. I've been there for 3 weeks now." Patricia continued examining the check, using her fingernail to trace along the edges. Other customers in line were starting to look over, wondering what was taking so long. Zara felt heat rising to her cheeks. "What kind of work do you do there exactly?" Patricia's voice carried a hint of suspicion that made Zara's stomach drop. "I help with the kids. We do arts and crafts, games. Sometimes I help them with reading. I also help set up for activities and clean up afterward." Zara tried to keep her voice steady, but she was starting to feel like she was being interrogated rather than helped. Patricia set the check down on the counter and stared at it for a long moment. "This amount seems high for someone your age." Zara blinked in surprise. "It's minimum wage for 3 weeks. I worked about 60 hours total." 60 hours? Patricia's eyebrows raised. "That's a lot of hours for a teenager. It's summer. I don't have school, so I can work more hours." Zara was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Why was this so complicated? Her friend David had opened an account at a different bank last month and said it only took 20 minutes. The line behind her was getting longer, and she could feel people's impatience. A woman with a baby stroller sighed audibly. A businessman checked his watch and frowned. Patricia picked up the check again, this time getting out a magnifying glass from under her counter. She studied the signature line, the bank routing numbers, and even the paper quality. Zara watched in growing bewilderment and embarrassment. "Ma'am, is there a problem with my check?" Zara asked quietly. Patricia looked up at her with an expression that made Zara's heart sink. It wasn't the look of someone trying to help. It was the look of someone who had already made up her mind about something. "Young lady, I've been working in banking for over 12 years. I've seen all kinds of situations." Patricia's voice was getting louder, and Zara noticed other customers starting to pay attention. "This check raises several red flags for me." Zara felt like the floor was spinning beneath her feet. Red flags? What did that mean? She had worked hard for that money. She had shown up every day, helped dozens of children, and earned every penny honestly. "I don't understand," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's wrong with it?" Patricia leaned forward slightly, and Zara could see the judgment in her eyes. The next words out of the teller's mouth would change everything, but in that moment, Zara still believed this was all just a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a simple phone call to her supervisor at the community center. She had no idea that in the next few minutes, her first real step into adulthood would become one of the most humiliating experiences of her young life. Patricia held the check up to the light again, squinting at it like she was examining a piece of evidence in a crime scene. The magnifying glass came out next, and she ran it slowly across every inch of the paper. Zara stood frozen at the window, watching this bizarre performance while other customers grew restless behind her. "The paper quality seems off," Patricia announced, loud enough for the people nearby to hear clearly. "And this signature looks suspicious." Zara's heart started pounding. "What do you mean suspicious?" "That's Mr. Rodriguez's signature. He's the program director." "How do I know you didn't forge this?" Patricia's voice carried across the lobby now. Several customers had stopped their own conversations to watch the drama unfolding at window 3. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. Forge? She had never stolen anything in her life, never cheated on a test, never even kept extra change when a cashier made a mistake. The accusation was so shocking that for a moment she couldn't even speak. "I didn't forge anything," Zara managed to say, but her voice came out shaky and weak. "I can call the community center right now if you want to verify it." Patricia shook her head dismissively. "Anyone can pay someone to answer a phone and pretend to be from a business. I've seen it all before." She turned the check over again, examining the back. "Plus, this amount is way too high for someone your age to be earning legitimately." "But I worked for it," Zara protested, her voice getting higher. "I can show you my timesheet. I have pictures on my phone from the summer camp activities." "Pictures can be faked too," Patricia said coldly. "Listen, honey, I'm trying to protect you here. Using fraudulent checks is a serious crime. You could go to jail for this." The word jail seemed to echo through the lobby. Zara felt every eye in the bank turn toward her. An elderly man shook his head in disapproval. A mother pulled her small child closer as if Zara might be dangerous. The businessman behind her took a step back. "I'm not using a fraudulent check." Zara's voice cracked as tears started forming in her eyes. "I work at the Riverside Community Center. I help take care of kids. I would never do anything illegal." Patricia's expression hardened. "That's exactly what someone with a fake check would say." "Do you think I was born yesterday?" She picked up the check and waved it in the air for everyone to see. "This is clearly a forgery. Look at this signature. It's too neat for someone writing dozens of checks. And the amount is written in handwriting that doesn't match the signature." Zara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She was trying so hard not to cry in front of all these strangers, but the humiliation was overwhelming. "Please just call the community center. The number is right there on the check. Ask for Mr. Rodriguez." "I don't have time to chase down your stories," Patricia snapped. "I have real customers waiting who need actual banking services." The comment stung worse than everything else. Real customers. As if Zara wasn't real, wasn't worthy of basic respect or service. She looked around the lobby desperately, hoping someone would speak up for her, but everyone just stared with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. "Ma'am," Please. Zara tried one more time. I just want to deposit my paycheck. I worked really hard for this money. Patricia had clearly heard enough. Without any warning, she grabbed the check with both hands and tore it cleanly in half. The sound of ripping paper seemed impossibly loud in the suddenly quiet bank. No, Zara gasped, reaching toward the torn pieces. But Patricia wasn't finished. She tore each half in half again, creating 4 pieces of what had been Zara's first real paycheck. Then, with deliberate cruelty, she let the pieces flutter down into the wastebasket beside her desk. There, Patricia said with satisfaction. I just saved you from committing a felony. You should be thanking me. Zara stared at the wastebasket in shock. 3 weeks of work gone. Hours of helping children with their projects, cleaning up spilled juice, organizing games and activities, all of it reduced to scraps of paper in the trash. You can't do that. Zara whispered. That was my money. I earned it. I just did do it, Patricia replied smugly. And if you don't leave right now, I'm calling security. We don't tolerate fraud attempts in this bank. The threat of security guards being called was the final humiliation. Zara looked around the lobby one more time, seeing the faces of people who had already decided she was guilty of something terrible. Some looked satisfied that justice had been served. Others seemed uncomfortable but unwilling to get involved. A few customers had their phones out, and Zara realized with horror that they might be recording this entire encounter. The thought of this moment ending up on social media made her stomach turn. Please, she whispered one last time. But Patricia had already turned her attention to her computer, dismissing Zara completely. Next customer, Patricia called out loudly, as if nothing had happened. The businessman stepped around Zara impatiently, shooting her an annoyed look as he approached the window. Zara stood there for another moment, still processing what had just occurred. Her first paycheck was gone. Her trust in the banking system was shattered. Her confidence in herself as a young adult was in pieces. She could hear Patricia greeting the businessman with a warm, professional tone, completely different from the cold suspicion she had shown Zara. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today? The contrast was like a slap in the face. Zara finally understood that this wasn't about the check at all. It was about Patricia's assumptions about who Zara was, what she was capable of, and whether she deserved basic respect and service. Slowly, Zara turned away from the window and started walking toward the exit. Her legs felt unsteady, and she had to concentrate on putting one foot in front of the other. The lobby seemed enormous now, like she was walking through a tunnel with all those judgmental eyes watching her. Leave! She passed the customer service desk where a friendly-looking woman was helping an elderly couple with their retirement account. She walked by the loan officer's desk where a young professional was discussing mortgage options. Everyone else in the bank was being treated like a valued customer, like a human being deserving of respect. As Zara reached for the door handle, she heard Patricia's voice carry across the lobby one more time. Some people just don't understand that banks have to protect themselves from fraud, Patricia was saying to the businessman, loud enough for everyone to hear. Especially with these kids today trying to pull fast ones. The comment was clearly meant for Zara to hear. It was Patricia's final attempt to justify what she had done, to paint herself as the hero who had protected the bank from a dangerous teenager with a fake check. Zara's hand froze on the door handle. For a split second, she considered turning around and confronting Patricia one more time. She thought about demanding to speak to a manager, about insisting that someone call the community center to verify her employment. But the fight had gone out of her. She felt small, powerless, and completely alone. All she wanted was to get out of this place and never come back. As she pushed through the glass doors into the afternoon heat, Zara had no idea that her humiliation was about to take an even more dramatic turn. She didn't know that in just a few moments. Everyone in that bank, especially Patricia Wells, would discover exactly who Zara Thompson really was. Zara walked through the bank's main lobby in a daze, her mind still reeling from what had just happened. The tears she had been holding back were starting to spill over, and she wiped them away quickly, not wanting to give anyone else a reason to stare at her. The lobby was designed to impress customers with its high ceilings, marble floors, and elegant furniture. Under normal circumstances, Zara might have admired the sophisticated atmosphere. But right now it all felt cold and unwelcoming, like a beautiful prison she couldn't wait to escape. She was almost to the exit when something caught her eye. In the center of the lobby, where it couldn't be missed by anyone entering or leaving the bank, was a massive new display that hadn't been there when she walked in 30 minutes earlier. Bank employees were still putting the finishing touches on it, adjusting the lighting and cleaning the glass surface. It was a promotional banner, at least 8 feet tall and 12 feet wide, with bold lettering that read Valley Trust Bank, proud to serve our community leaders. But it wasn't the words that made Zara stop dead in her tracks. It was the photograph. The banner featured a large professional portrait of a distinguished African-American man in an expensive suit. He was smiling confidently, the kind of smile that suggested success and authority. Below the photo in smaller text was his name and title, Dr. Michael Thompson, Board of Directors. Zara's legs nearly gave out beneath her. She stared at the familiar face, the same face she had seen across the breakfast table that morning, the same man who had driven her to her first day of work at the community center, the same person who had taught her how to ride a bike and helped her with her math homework for years. It was her father. Dr. Michael Thompson wasn't just any board member. He was one of the most respected doctors in the city, serving on multiple hospital boards, the city council, and various community organizations. He had been banking at Valley Trust for over 15 years, long before Zara was even born. This wasn't just his bank. He helped make decisions about how it was run. Zara stood frozen, staring up at her father's image while her mind tried to process the irony of the situation. Here she was, humiliated and accused of fraud, while 10 feet away was a giant photograph celebrating her father as one of the bank's most valued community partners. She thought about all the times her father had mentioned this bank at dinner, talking about board meetings and community initiatives. She remembered him saying how proud he was that Valley Trust was committed to serving all members of the community fairly and respectfully. He had even chosen this bank specifically for the family's accounts because of their supposed values. The community center where Zara worked wasn't just a random summer job. It was one of Dr. Thompson's pet projects, a program he had helped establish and fund to provide activities for underprivileged children during summer break. The check that Patricia had torn up wasn't just Zara's paycheck. It was funded partly by her own father's charitable contributions. As Zara stared at the banner, she became aware that other people in the lobby were starting to notice her reaction. A security guard looked concerned and started walking in her direction. A customer service representative glanced over curiously, but it was Patricia who noticed first. From her position at the teller window, Patricia had a clear view of the lobby. She had been watching Zara's slow walk toward the exit with satisfaction, pleased with herself for handling what she saw as a potential fraud situation. But when Zara stopped and stared at the new banner, Patricia's curiosity was piqued. Following Zara's gaze, Patricia looked at the display for the first time since it had been installed that morning. She read the name on the banner, Dr. Michael Thompson. The name seemed familiar, but she couldn't immediately place it. Then it hit her like a lightning bolt. Thompson. The girl's name was Zara Thompson. Patricia's face went white as the connection formed in her mind. She grabbed the edge of her counter to steady herself, her heart suddenly racing. She thought about Dr. Thompson's accounts, his substantial savings, his mortgage, his business investments. She remembered processing his deposits, his charity donations, his loan payments. Dr. Thompson wasn't just any customer. He was one of the bank's most important clients, someone whose business was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. And Patricia had just humiliated and accused his daughter of fraud. From her window, Patricia watched Zara pull out her phone with shaking hands. She saw the girl dial a number and then speak quietly into the phone. Although she couldn't hear the conversation, Patricia's imagination filled in the details, and each imagined word made her feel sicker. Zara's phone call was brief but emotional. "Dad," she said when he answered, "something terrible happened at the bank. Can you come here, please? I'm at Valley Trust on Main Street." Dr. Thompson's voice immediately became concerned. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay, but..." Zara's voice broke. "They tore up my paycheck. The teller said it was fake and she ripped it up in front of everyone. She said I was trying to commit fraud." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Dr. Thompson spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled, but Zara could hear the anger underneath. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't leave." Patricia watched Zara end the call and sit down in one of the lobby chairs, still staring up at her father's photograph. The irony of the situation was becoming clear to everyone who witnessed it. A janitor cleaning nearby shook his head in obvious disapproval. The customer service representative whispered something to her colleague, both of them glancing toward Patricia's window. Patricia frantically began trying to piece the torn check back together. She dug through her wastebasket, pulling out the 4 pieces and trying to arrange them on her counter. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pieces steady. The check was definitely real. Looking at it now, Patricia could see that the signature was perfectly legitimate. The paper quality was standard for business checks, and the amount was completely reasonable for a teenager's summer job. Everything she had claimed was suspicious was actually normal, but it was too late for the check. Even if she could tape it back together, it would never be acceptable for deposit now. The routing numbers were partially obscured by tape marks and the signature line was damaged. She had destroyed a legitimate paycheck belonging to the daughter of one of the bank's board members. Patricia looked around the lobby desperately, hoping somehow that Dr. Thompson might not show up, that this whole situation might just disappear. But she could see Zara sitting patiently in the chair, occasionally glancing at the banner that featured her father's proud smile. Other customers were starting to put the pieces together too. The businessman who had stepped around Zara was now staring at the banner, then at Zara, then back at the banner. His expression suggested he was beginning to understand what had really happened at window 3. The elderly couple who had been waiting in line were whispering to each other, occasionally pointing in Patricia's direction. Word was spreading through the lobby about the connection between the girl who had been accused of fraud and the man whose photo dominated the bank's new promotional display. Patricia tried to focus on her other customers, but her hands were shaking too badly to count money accurately. She made 3 errors in a row, having to start over each time. Her supervisor, Mr. Chen, noticed the problems and came over to check on her. "Patricia, is everything all right? You seem flustered." Patricia looked at him with panic in her eyes. She wanted to explain what had happened, but she couldn't find the words. "How do you tell your supervisor that you just accused the daughter of a board member of forgery and destroyed her legitimate paycheck in front of a lobby full of witnesses?" "I think I made a mistake," Patricia whispered. Mr. Chen followed her gaze toward Zara, who was still sitting in the chair looking up at her father's photograph. The situation was becoming clear to him as well, and his expression grew very serious very quickly. "What kind of mistake, Patricia?" Before she could answer, the bank's front doors opened and Dr. Michael Thompson walked in. He was still wearing his white doctor's coat over his business clothes, having left the hospital immediately after Zara's call. His expression was calm but determined as he scanned the lobby for his daughter. When Zara saw him, she stood up and walked over quickly. Dr. Thompson wrapped her in a protective hug, and Patricia could see them talking quietly. Zara pointed toward the teller windows, and Dr. Thompson's gaze followed her finger directly to Patricia's station. The moment their eyes met across the lobby, Patricia knew her career at Valley Trust Bank was about to take a very dramatic turn. Dr. Thompson's presence changed the entire atmosphere of the bank lobby. Even though he entered quietly, there was an unmistakable authority about him that made people take notice. He was the kind of man who commanded respect not through intimidation, but through his obvious intelligence, success, and dignity. Patricia watched from her window as Dr. Thompson listened carefully to his daughter's explanation of what had happened. She saw Zara point toward the teller windows, and when Dr. Thompson's gaze found hers, Patricia felt her world start to crumble. But Dr. Thompson didn't storm over to confront her. Instead, he walked calmly to the customer service desk and asked to speak with the branch manager immediately. His voice was controlled and professional, but there was steel underneath the politeness. "Certainly, Dr. Thompson," the customer service representative said, clearly recognizing him. "I'll get Mr. Chen right away." Within moments, Mr. Chen appeared from his office, his face lighting up with the kind of smile reserved for the bank's most important customers. "Dr. Thompson, what a pleasant surprise. I hope you're here to see our new promotional display. You look fantastic in that photograph." Dr. Thompson's expression didn't change. "Actually, Richard, I'm here about a very serious problem involving my daughter." Mr. Chen's smile faltered as he glanced toward Zara, who was still standing near the banner. The pieces started falling into place for him, and Patricia could see the color draining from his face. Perhaps we should discuss this in my office, Mr. Chen said quickly, gesturing toward the private offices behind the lobby. No, Dr. Thompson said firmly. What happened to my daughter occurred in this lobby in front of all these customers. I think we need to address it here. Patricia felt like she might faint. Through her window, she could hear every word of the conversation, and she knew that everyone else in the lobby was listening too. The businessman who had pushed past Zara was pretending to fill out a deposit slip, but his attention was completely focused on the developing drama. Dr. Thompson's voice carried clearly across the marble floors. My 16-year-old daughter came to this bank to open her first account and deposit her first paycheck. She's been working at the Riverside Community Center for 3 weeks, helping with summer camp activities. Instead of receiving the customer service that Valley Trust claims to provide, she was accused of fraud and had her legitimate paycheck destroyed. Mr. Chen looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Dr. Thompson, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. There's been no misunderstanding, Dr. Thompson interrupted. Your teller publicly accused my daughter of forgery, claimed her paycheck was fake, and tore it up in front of a lobby full of customers. She threatened to call security and suggested that Zara could go to jail for fraud. Patricia could hear the anger building in Dr. Thompson's voice, despite his efforts to remain professional. She wanted to hide under her counter, but she couldn't look away from the conversation. The community center where Zara works, Dr. Thompson continued, is one of the charitable organizations I helped establish. The program is funded partly by donations from my medical practice. The check your teller destroyed was legitimate payment for legitimate work. Mr. Chen was nodding frantically, clearly understanding the magnitude of the situation. Dr. Thompson, I am absolutely horrified by what you're telling me. This is completely contrary to our values and policies. I assure you we will investigate this immediately and take appropriate action. Investigation? Dr. Thompson's voice rose slightly. Richard, there's nothing to investigate. It happened right here in front of witnesses. Your security cameras recorded the entire incident. At the mention of security cameras, Patricia felt her knees go weak. She had completely forgotten about the cameras. Every moment of her interaction with Zara had been recorded. Her suspicious examination of the check, her loud accusations, her decision to tear up the paycheck. There would be no way to deny what had happened or claim it was a misunderstanding. Mr. Chen excused himself briefly and spoke quickly to the customer service representative, who immediately picked up her phone and made a call. Patricia could guess what was happening. They were pulling the security footage to review the incident. While they waited, Dr. Thompson walked over to his daughter and spoke quietly with her. Patricia could see Zara nodding and wiping her eyes. She looked so young and vulnerable sitting there next to her father's larger-than-life photograph on the banner. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the lobby. Here was Dr. Thompson, being celebrated by the bank as a community leader while his daughter had been treated like a criminal. The contrast between the respect shown to him and the suspicion shown to her was stark and uncomfortable. Within minutes, Mr. Chen returned with a tablet in his hand. His face was grim as he approached Dr. Thompson. I've reviewed the security footage, he said quietly. What happened to your daughter is inexcusable. I am personally appalled and embarrassed. Dr. Thompson nodded but remained stern. What are you going to do about it? First, I want to offer my sincere apology to both you and Zara. This incident does not represent the values of Valley Trust Bank. Second, the employee responsible will be suspended immediately pending a full investigation. Third, we will arrange for an immediate replacement of Zara's paycheck and personally handle the opening of her account. Patricia felt the blood drain from her face as she realized her fate was being decided across the lobby. Suspended immediately. Those words echoed in her mind as she watched Mr. Chen gesture toward her window. Patricia Wells, Mr. Chen called out, his voice carrying across the lobby. Please close your window and report to my office immediately. Every head in the lobby turned toward Patricia. The customers who had witnessed the original incident were now watching her walk of shame toward the manager's office. The businessman shook his head in disapproval. The elderly couple whispered to each other about how terrible the whole situation was. As Patricia walked past Dr. Thompson and Zara, she tried to think of something to say. An apology, an explanation, anything that might help her situation. But what could she possibly say? That she was sorry for publicly humiliating his daughter? That she was sorry for destroying legitimate property? that she was sorry for being so prejudiced that she couldn't recognize a hard-working teenager when she saw one. "Patricia," Dr. Thompson said as she passed. His voice stopped her in her tracks. She turned to face him, expecting anger or disgust. Instead, she saw something worse, disappointment. Not just in her actions, but in what those actions represented about human nature and the assumptions people make about others. "I hope you understand," Dr. Thompson said quietly, "that what you did to my daughter today will stay with her for the rest of her life. She'll remember this moment every time she walks into a bank, every time she tries to conduct business, every time someone looks at her with suspicion instead of respect." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to explain that she hadn't meant for things to go so far, that she was just trying to protect the bank, that she had made an honest mistake, but she knew that none of those excuses would change what she had done or how it had affected Zara. "I'm sorry," Patricia whispered, but the words felt inadequate. Dr. Thompson nodded slightly. "Sorry isn't enough, Patricia, but maybe this can be a learning experience for everyone involved." As Patricia continued toward Mr. Chen's office, she heard Dr. Thompson address the lobby full of customers who had witnessed the entire drama. "I want everyone here to know," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "that my daughter is one of the hardest working, most honest young people I know. She earned every dollar of that paycheck by helping children in our community. She deserved better treatment than she received today." The customers nodded in agreement, many of them looking ashamed that they had initially believed Patricia's accusations. Some approached Zara to offer words of support and encouragement. Patricia reached Mr. Chen's office and turned back one last time to see the scene in the lobby. Dr. Thompson was shaking hands with customers who wanted to express their support. Zara was standing tall next to her father, no longer the embarrassed teenager who had been accused of fraud, but a young woman who had learned an important lesson about standing up for herself and the power of family support. The banner featuring Dr. Thompson's photograph loomed over the entire scene, a constant reminder of how wrong Patricia had been about who Zara Thompson really was and what she represented. 3 weeks later, Zara walked through the same glass doors of Valley Trust Bank, but this time everything was different. She carried herself with more confidence, and the lobby that had once seemed intimidating now felt like a place where she belonged. Patricia's suspension had become permanent termination after the bank's investigation revealed this wasn't her first incident of discriminatory behavior. Security footage from previous months showed a pattern of treating young customers, particularly those from minority backgrounds, with unnecessary suspicion and hostility. Mr. Chen had personally handled Zara's account opening, ensuring she received the respect and service she should have gotten from the beginning. The community center had issued a replacement check within hours, and Dr. Thompson made sure the story became a teaching moment rather than just a punishment. Today, Zara wasn't here as a customer. She was here as a volunteer in the bank's new youth financial literacy program, something that had emerged directly from her experience 3 weeks earlier. "Are you nervous?" asked Kevin, a 15-year-old who was opening his first account. He had heard about what happened to Zara and was worried about facing similar treatment. "A little," Zara admitted, "but that's normal. Opening your first bank account is a big deal. Just remember you belong here as much as anyone else." Kevin smiled and straightened his shoulders. Zara had been working with him for 2 weeks, teaching him about different types of accounts, how to read bank statements, and how to advocate for himself if he encountered problems. The Youth Financial Literacy Program had been Dr. Thompson's idea, proposed during an emergency board meeting the day after Zara's incident. He suggested that the bank partner with local community organizations to provide banking education and support for teenagers, particularly those from underserved communities. "We can't just apologize for what happened," Dr. Thompson had told the board. "We need to make sure it never happens again. And we need to create opportunities for young people to learn about financial responsibility in a welcoming environment." The program launched with Zara as its first volunteer coordinator. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, she came to the bank to help teenagers open accounts, understand banking basics, and navigate financial services without fear or intimidation. Today's group included Kevin, plus 2 sisters named Ashley and Crystal, who had been saving money from babysitting jobs, and a young man named Diego who worked part-time at a local restaurant. All of them had heard about Zara's experience and were both nervous and inspired by her resilience. "Remember what we practiced," Zara said as they approached the customer service desk. "Make eye contact, speak clearly, and don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong here." The customer service representative was Mrs. Lopez, a warm woman in her 50s, who had volunteered to be the primary staff person for the youth program. She greeted each teenager by name and made them feel welcome and valued. "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to help you take this important step toward financial independence." As Zara watched Kevin confidently explain that he wanted to open a savings account, she thought about how different this experience was from her own first visit. The contrast was striking. Instead of suspicion and hostility, these young people were receiving encouragement and support. But the most significant change wasn't in the bank's policies or procedures. It was in Zara herself. The incident with Patricia had been devastating, but it had also taught her valuable lessons about resilience, advocacy, and the importance of standing up for herself and others. She had learned that discrimination and prejudice were real and painful, but they didn't have to define her or limit her potential. Dr. Thompson had helped her process the experience, explaining that Patricia's behavior said nothing about Zara's worth or character, but everything about Patricia's own biases and limitations. "Some people make assumptions based on age, race, or appearance," he had told her. "That's their problem, not yours. Your job is to keep being exactly who you are, hardworking, honest, and determined." The community center had been incredibly supportive as well. Mr. Rodriguez, the program director, had personally called the bank to verify Zara's employment and express his outrage about how she had been treated. Her coworkers had rallied around her, sharing their own stories of facing discrimination and offering advice about handling difficult situations. But perhaps the most surprising outcome was the support she received from complete strangers. Word of the incident had spread through social media, and Zara found herself receiving messages from people all over the city who had experienced similar treatment at banks and other businesses. "Your story gave me the courage to report what happened to me at a car dealership," one woman wrote. "Thank you for showing that we don't have to accept disrespectful treatment." A local news station had even contacted Dr. Thompson for an interview about discrimination in customer service, though he had declined, preferring to focus on positive solutions rather than dwelling on the negative incident. As the afternoon session continued, Zara helped Ashley and Crystal open a joint savings account for their college fund. She watched Diego confidently ask questions about direct deposit and online banking. She saw Kevin successfully complete his first transaction with pride and excitement. These young people would have a very different first banking experience than she had, and that made all the difference. "Ms. Thompson," called Mrs. Lopez, "could you help Diego with the mobile banking app setup?" Zara smiled at being called Ms. Thompson with such respect. It was a small thing, but it represented the kind of treatment every customer deserved, regardless of their age, background, or the size of their account. As she helped Diego navigate the app, Zara reflected on how much she had grown in just 3 weeks. The scared, humiliated teenager who had left this bank with tears in her eyes had been replaced by a confident young woman who was helping others navigate their own financial journeys. The torn check that had caused so much pain was now framed in Dr. Thompson's office, taped back together and displayed as a reminder that negative experiences could be transformed into positive change. Beside it hung a photo from the first day of the Youth Financial Literacy Program, showing Zara surrounded by smiling teenagers who were taking control of their financial futures. At the end of the session, as the group prepared to leave, Kevin approached Zara with a big grin on his face. "I can't believe I was nervous," he said, holding up his new debit card. "That was actually fun." "Banking should be fun," Zara replied. "Or at least it should never be scary or humiliating." As they walked toward the exit, Zara noticed that Dr. Thompson's banner was still prominently displayed in the lobby. But now it had been joined by a new display promoting the Youth Financial Literacy Program, featuring photos of young people learning about banking and taking control of their financial futures. The message was clear. Valley Trust Bank was committed to serving all members of the community with respect and dignity, regardless of their age or background. Zara's phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor at the community center. "Great news. The mayor wants to expand the youth banking program to 3 more branches. Can you help train the new volunteer coordinators? Zara typed back quickly, absolutely. Let's make sure every teenager in the city has a positive first banking experience. As she sent the message, Zara realized that Patricia's prejudice and poor judgment had inadvertently created something beautiful. What was meant to tear her down had instead built her up and created opportunities for hundreds of other young people. Walking out of the bank that day, Zara felt proud of who she was becoming and excited about the positive changes she was helping to create. The scared teenager who had been accused of fraud was gone, replaced by a confident young woman who was making a real difference in her community. Sometimes, she thought, the worst experiences can lead to the best outcomes if you're willing to turn pain into purpose and use your voice to create positive change.